Hi, good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to this morning's NCAA Daily Briefing with Dan Gavitt. We are going to allow a few seconds for our participants, or attendees, I should say, to enter, and then we'll turn it over to Dan for opening remarks. A reminder, if you have a question for Dan, to go ahead and use the raise hand function. It should be at the lower center of your screen. At this time, we'll turn it over to Dan, and Dan can have some opening remarks, and then we'll take some questions. Dan, go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everybody, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Wanted to start with an update from the NCAA Division II Men's Basketball Championship. Yesterday, the Elite Eight field was completed with 8 games played successfully, and we'll have now 8 teams advancing to play in the Elite Eight at the Ford Center in Evansville, Indiana, March 24 through 27. The field will be reseeded and the matchups will be made and announced later today on NCAA.com. To date, through the 4 days the teams have been here in Indianapolis, there have been over 6,900 COVID tests taken and completed with results. And of those 6,900 plus tests, there have been 7 confirmed positives. The 0.1% positivity rate is certainly encouraging and remarkable, I think, given that it is significantly lower than the local and national averages and positivity rates. Considering the 67 teams have joined us in Indianapolis from all over the nation, I think it's a credit to all of the teams and institutions and the risk mitigation that they have been completing and practicing throughout their preparation of coming into Indy for March Madness, and as well as the 7 days of tests that were required before arriving in Indy as well. And of course, that risk mitigation and that daily testing continues here in the controlled environment, and we're hopeful that the success for keeping everybody healthy and safe will continue, obviously. As a result of that, we can officially announce this morning that the deadline for replacement teams of the 68 teams has passed. It passed, I think, as most of you know, last night at 6 o'clock Eastern time. And we're happy to report that none of the 68 teams in this year's tournament had to withdraw for any reason. Not only are we appreciative of the steps that the teams have taken, as I noted, in taking to follow closely the health and safety protocols to keep them ready to compete starting this weekend. We're also grateful to those teams that were preparing should we need them as replacement teams, the first 4 out, as well as the backup automatic qualifiers from single bid leagues. But we are pleased that we won't have to activate those contingency plans. And we have 68 teams that are ready to start competition with first 4 games tomorrow night and then first round games on Friday and Saturday. Yesterday, we had 59 teams practice in the Indiana Convention Center from about 9 o'clock in the morning until after 11 o'clock last night. The weight room has been set up and utilized by many teams yesterday, as well as some extra shooting time as well. And then the athletic training center is set up and has been utilized by teams in preparation for their first game also. Yesterday, 8 teams, all the teams that are competing in the first 4 games, did practice also at IU and at Purdue. And today, every competition venue is being utilized for team practices except for Bankers Life. The Pacers have a game tonight. So Bankers Life will start with practice opportunities tomorrow, but every other competition venue is being used by teams today, as well as the convention center for team practices. Be happy to stop there and open it up for any questions. Dave, thanks.
Thanks, Dan. And just before we take questions, just like to remind the media, since you'll be spending a lot of time in Indiana, and Dan mentioned the Division II championship, if you would like to drive down to Evansville next week for the Elite Eight and be credentialed for that event, it's a terrific event, and we encourage you to do that if you can find the time. It's a little less than 3 hours down to Evansville. And if you would like credentials to that, just email me and I'll get you in touch with David Lentz, our media coordinator for that championship. Now we'll go into questions, and we'll start with Ralph Russo.
Good morning, Dan. So I don't want to make too much of, a couple of tweets complaining about this or that food, but when you hear those things, A, do you cringe a little bit, even if it's just a scant few complaints, and B, coming from, maybe a coach or a player about life in the controlled environment, and B, once a plan is in place, maybe you sort of notice things could have been done better or tweaked. So is there anything, when you hear the complaints, do you find yourself thinking, okay, how can we maybe make some things better?
Sure. Thanks, Ralph. Good morning. Yeah, I think we had a very solid plan in place. Teams are required to use hotels for 2 of their 3 meals per day per contract with the hotels, and the 3rd meal can be arranged as a takeout or arranged with the hotel. We have also seen an enormous number of deliveries arranged by teams and even arranged by individual student athletes and coaches. Deliveries have been happening as late as 3 o'clock in the morning. We have a process in place to take those deliveries in, so there's no contact. We have hotel ambassadors. The delivery is made into a secured area. And so there's no, person-to-person contact in order to keep everybody healthy and safe. And we know that this is true also because, frankly, the trash that has been accumulated on each of the team floors has been enormous with all the takeout packages and the like. So we're very confident that student athletes and teams are getting plenty of food. We know that for all of us, takeout food and food in containers, the basketball committee, the staff is not optimal compared to what we're used to and would otherwise enjoy on china or with utensils that we like to use rather than the plastic utensils and all. So yeah, we're concerned about every small detail, Ralph. We had a team yesterday morning that their breakfast was delayed because of a variety of reasons for almost an hour. And that was incredibly regrettable. We went to great lengths yesterday after the fact to work with the team, apologize, make sure that it wouldn't happen again, and are confident that it won't. But yeah, there's no question when you bring 68 teams into one controlled environment, 4 hotels, the logistics around it are complicated. And we are working and adjusting on a day-to-day basis of making sure that it gets better and better. But we also saw some of that, even when the NBA had their bubble in Orlando, some of the commentary about meals was mixed. And I think we can all appreciate in this environment, pandemic, takeout food can be less than desirable sometimes.
Mickey Shuey, please go with your question.
Hi, Dan. Mickey Shuey with IBJ News. Not to beat a dead horse, but in terms of the officials that the official that tested positive over the weekend, how can the public be confident in the veracity of the bubble if officials are already kind of going outside the bubble to get meals if that was approved by the NCAA?
Well, first of all, Mickey, the meal that took place, it's our understanding, took place before the officials were already settled into their hotels and into the testing regimen that is required. Everybody has decisions to make on their own, and those decisions in advance of arrival are not the responsibility of the NCAA. I'm also very confident that there was not NCAA staff that encouraged meals to be had in restaurants. There was maybe some encouragement to get a bite to eat in a safe and healthy and responsible way, but at no time was there a direction to go and have a meal at a restaurant outside the controlled environment.
John Rothstein, please go with your question.
Good morning, Dan. Obviously exciting news regarding the 67 teams that are here in Indianapolis, but the one team that is not here is Virginia. They're expected to arrive later this week. What is the ETA right now for Virginia to get on the ground in Indianapolis, and what will their itinerary be leading up to their round of 64 game against Ohio?
Yeah, good morning, John. We're anticipating Virginia's arrival on Friday early afternoon, at which point they would be tested as every other team was upon intake, a PCR test as soon as they arrive at the hotel. A quarantine period in their hotel rooms, exactly the same as all 67 other teams, of well over 12 hours before they would have a second test done, PCR test, which will be done at this point planned to be after midnight, early morning hours. And then they would go back to their rooms, of course, to quarantine and sleep overnight, and then have the day to prepare as relatively normal on Saturday when they play Saturday evening at 7:15. Like every other team in the tournament, they will also have their daily test taken, prior to their game on Saturday as well. So essentially, because of their unique arrival time, Virginia will have 3 different tests taken, 2 required by our medical protocols, and then their daily test that would be given, for every team during the competition schedule.
And Dan, to follow up on that, have we determined, obviously, if there will be any sort of practice time after they clear protocols before the game Saturday night against Ohio? Will they have any time in the gym?
They will. Yeah, they'll have a scheduled practice time. I don't recall, John, if it's at the competition venue or if it's in the convention center. Given the number of games that are playing that day, I think it's probably in the convention center. But they will absolutely have a practice time, as will every other team that day before their first game. But they will not be able to have any team activities until they clear that quarantine period, have their second test results back, and have those tests be negative.
Thank you, Dan.
You bet. Thanks, John.
Dan Wolken, please go with your question.
Yeah, Dan, to piggyback on the question Ralph asked earlier, there's been some comments from players, in these media sessions about, it's not easy to deal with kind of the restrictions they're being asked to deal with. I mean, basically being alone in their rooms other than, the couple hours a day. Is there any thought of maybe adjusting protocols at any point to maybe give teams a little more time together?
Sure, Dan, thanks. Well, first of all, teams are not required to be in their rooms the entire time, as long as they stay within the controlled environment, which is the 4-team hotels and the convention center, and they practice good, physical distancing. They can be out and moving around the controlled environment as much as they want. There may be team decisions that mitigate that, but in terms of the tournament policies, as long as they stay within a controlled environment, they can move freely. They have opportunity to be in their team meeting rooms in the convention center, their team meeting rooms in the hotel, or just wander around the convention center, for a little exercise and freedom. We also have next door, I think I mentioned yesterday, Victory Field, which is a minor league ballpark here, that we have time set aside for entire teams or portions thereof to go outside for an hour or two, as long as they want. And have some activity outside. We've got footballs and soccer balls and badminton nets set up, and so there's an opportunity to get outside doing that as well. So, again, there may be teams that are being more restrictive, but as long as teams are staying in that controlled environment, we're providing as much freedom and flexibility as possible. In terms of adjusting, I don't anticipate adjusting. We will have, as I think I mentioned, more opportunity once we get down to the Sweet 16 to have more prearranged activities. We've arranged, for example, an outing to Topgolf, where we have the entire facility to ourselves, to the Indianapolis Zoo, and may be able to do some other things like that to get teams out of the controlled environment per se, and out of the hotels, and have some kind of entertainment and engagement like that. But in terms of, dramatically changing our protocols inside the controlled environment, or even tweaking them, I don't anticipate that. I think it's is too important for everybody's health and safety and for keeping teams which they want to be able to have a chance to play in all these games and determine a national champion. Thanks for your question.
No, thank you very much.
You bet.
Mark Ziegler, please go with your question.
Hi, I have a question, a very quick follow-up to it. You've got these players in a very, very strict restrictions, and then you have fans that pretty much can do whatever they want. I come from California. Indiana's a pretty open state in terms of restaurants and bars. Tonight, St. Patty's Day, as you mentioned. I suspect these players will be looking down from their hotel rooms and seeing, quite a few people packed in restaurants and bars. Just curious about the how and why the decision was made to have one section of the population, the players, very restrictive, and the other section, which is probably a more vulnerable section of the population, able to do whatever they want, and they're both able to go to these games either as fans or obviously as participants.
I'm not sure I completely understand your question, Mark, but I'll try. I mean, first of all, we're running a tournament to determine a national champion, and I'm very confident that every student athlete in this competition and every coach wants a chance to play their game and determine who the better team is on the court. The only way to hope to get that opportunity is to have an environment where everyone is tested, that the risk mitigation is in place so that you don't have a positive test or indeed contact tracing that could knock out an entire team like we saw regularly during the regular season. So I've got no reservations at all about the plan here to give us the best opportunity to play games successfully. And I'm very confident that the student athletes, coaches, and teams want that environment in order to give them the best chance to play these games. And I'd encourage you to ask them that, because that's what we heard all year from last summer. Give us a chance to play these games successfully. In terms of the fans, our positivity rate in the state of Indiana is down to below 3% now locally. We made a very informed and careful decision that took weeks in consultation with local health authorities about whether we should have fans in attendance or not. This was a decision that was made with local health officials and also with NCAA committee and staff after much consideration. Had things not improved significantly in our nation and locally here over the last several weeks and months, I don't know that we would be having fans. But the opportunity was what our membership wanted. It's what the local health officials were comfortable with. We're up to 25%. The capacity numbers, which I'll share tomorrow, are actually far less than that in some venues in order to maintain physical distancing in those competition venues. And ultimately, it's up to fans as to whether they want to attend or not. But the opportunity, we believe, should be there if they want to do so in a safe and responsible way, and that we're putting things in place to keep everybody healthy and safe. That's our first and foremost priority. In terms of restaurants and bars and things like that, that's a local ordinance and decision, and the county and state seem to be comfortable with the decisions that they've made in order to have more opportunity and less restriction in that way.
A quick follow-up. If a player tests positive and contact tracing comes to a coach or a staff member, many of whom I understand have been vaccinated, and a person has been vaccinated, but they're also contact traced to a positive player, will that person who's been vaccinated be eliminated from the pool, or will they be allowed to continue?
If an individual has been vaccinated by more than 2 weeks, so fully vaccinated 2+ weeks from that last shot, they would not be subject to contact tracing.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Mark.
I don't see any other hands up. Does anyone have a question for Dan? Yes, Ralph Russo, please.
Yeah, sorry, Dan, make you work a little bit more today.
No problem, Ralph.
I guess this will be a follow-up to mine and Dan's Wilkins question, and that is, you talk about like not really tweaking protocols. Does it concern you at all? You talked about the food, and I understand how that's addressed. When you hear players sort of saying, oh, they just gave us a box of deodorant and things like that. Again, I understand like a couple of complaints is not that big of a deal, but you put so much into this, and we know the players want to play. But when you hear the feeling like maybe they're a little underappreciated, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings about that?
Honestly, Ralph, I mean, I understand it. I've got teenage sons, and they feel underappreciated by me and my family sometimes. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but I am trying to put it into context. I understand there's a lot of perspectives in our business, in our world right now. And so I respect those different opinions and perspectives. We try to do everything we can within our current rules and within what our membership expects about how we provide for a really positive and memorable experience for student athletes here at this men's basketball championship, but also at the women's basketball championship and other NCAA championships. And there are current limitations to what we can do in relation to what some student athletes or family members may believe we should do. And so I respect that. And we go to great lengths to try to meet, that experience and make it one that's very memorable and enjoyable for them. And this year in particular, it's challenging because that is also compounded by the limitations around our policies in health and safety. I mean, there are some things that we could do in a normal situation that we'd be more than happy to do that we can't this year because it would increase the risk involved for those kind of activities. And so it's been a challenge for our staff to try to, provide that incredible experience, provide as much as we can to make it a rich experience, and yet not go to such lengths that we jeopardize the health and safety or integrity or success of the event overall. But I hope that answers your question. I respect opinions and perspectives, and we're working within the framework that we have to work with right now, and I hope and think that we're accomplishing that to a great degree. I will say I've walked around a lot the last 2 days in the convention center, gone out of my way to talk to coaches and student athletes and administrators, and their feedback to me has been very positive and very encouraging. And I think I have a close enough relationship with so many in our game that if they really were having a bad experience or had significant concerns, they would share that with me. And I encourage them to do that, frankly, to be unvarnished with their assessment of their experience here. So we would welcome that. If there's things we can do to change and evolve this during the next 2 weeks, we will consider it. But it will have to be, run through the filter and lens of doing it in a way that keeps everybody healthy and safe and helps us get to all 67 games, with the last one being played on April 5th.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Ralph.
Lane Higgins, please go with your question.
Hey there, Dan. I wanted to ask a question about some of the entertainment options that might be available within the hotels. I understand that the NCAA has created sort of libraries for the student athletes to use, but is there any other sort of kind of boredom relief outlets that are available to players within the hotels?
Sure, Lane. Thanks for your question. Yeah, we have a library set up. We have an academic resource center set up in the convention center also for student athletes to print things out if they need to for classwork or to get help with technology, for their devices for schoolwork and the like. We also provided some swag that are in each of the student athletes' rooms. Inclusive of that is John Thompson Jr.'s book, I Came as a Shadow. There's also a big 500-piece puzzle that maybe eliminates some time and boredom in rooms. We set up, as I mentioned earlier, opportunities and activities at Victory Field, a minor league ballpark adjacent to the hotels and convention center. The student athletes can go out and throw a football or kick a soccer ball. There's, I think that there's cornhole and activities like that out there. And a lot of teams, frankly, brought some of their own kind of entertainment. Certainly the student athletes brought video games with them. We're arranging some kind of a friendly video game competition here. Once we get down to 16 teams, there'll be a lot more activities that we can activate once we have a more manageable number of teams, and some more increased outdoor activities I mentioned earlier as well at the zoo and at Topgolf, and maybe some other things as well. So it gives you hopefully a little sense, but like I said, teams have brought their own kind of, entertainment. We've had we're going to figure out a way to kind of share this because it's kind of interesting just from a human interest perspective. Maybe we've had the craziest deliveries, including wiffle ball sets, and we've had deliveries from Amazon and others for teams of student athletes during the entire 3 or 4 days they've been here. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit, provides a little insight and perspective. Happy to provide more if I can think of more tomorrow.
Yeah, certainly. I was curious to follow up. Other than the wiffle ball sets, what are some of the other crazier Amazon things? I know Patrick Ewing has had to Amazon deliver some, it sounds like, basic clothing essentials, but I don't know if there's anything else that the athletes have been ordering.
Yeah, we had a staff meeting late last night, Lane, and they shared some of those orders, but I don't remember the details. So we'll compile that for you. We will send it to you, and then we'll share it if others are interested on the call tomorrow.
Yeah, and then just one more small question about the logistics. I understand that doing laundry for so many people was a bit of a daunting task to figure out at the beginning of this. And now that we're a couple days into the bubble in Indianapolis, how has that been? How many sweaty socks and pants are we dealing with?
A lot. Lowe's, which is one of our corporate partners, has provided the laundry equipment to be able to do practice gear and game uniforms, as well as starting next week, personal items for travel parties and staff and committee members. I will get those numbers for you as well, but they've been enormous, and we couldn't have done it, frankly, without Lowe's, without having the equipment here. It's all set up kind of outside the convention center, and that would be an interesting story too, because it's a pretty big undertaking, as you can imagine.
I'm sure. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thanks, Lane.
That concludes this morning's NCAA Daily Briefing with Dan Gavitt. We'd like to remind you that tomorrow, Dan will do another one at 11 a.m. Eastern again, 6 hours or so after the conclusion of that. The 2021 Men's Basketball Championship begins with the first game of the first four featuring Texas Southern, Mount St. Mary's, a little after 5 o'clock from Assembly Hall in Bloomington, and that game will be on True TV, and we'll be off and running with March Madness. So tomorrow will be the last call with Dan, but if you have questions for Dan over the weekend, you can reach out either to me or Stacy Osborne of our Public and Media Relations staff, and we'll coordinate with him to try to respond to you as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow at 11 for the final briefing of this week. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.